There it was, a white Bentley Continental, parked directly in front of my barn doors like it was posing for a lifestyle magazine called Wealthy, Entitled, and Unpunctured. So I did what any rational man with 38 years of farming and a well-maintained Massey Ferguson tractor would do. I lifted it, tilted it, and parked it on top of my manure pile like a cherry atop a sundae of justice. HOA Karen. She screamed like I had run over her firstborn, which, honestly, I may have if her firstborn was also a British luxury vehicle with vanity plates that read HOA 1 Queen. My name's Gordon Bellamy, but folks call me Gordy. I'm a fifth-generation livestock farmer and proud owner of 14 acres in Timber Hollow Ridge, a semi-rural community where fields outnumber sidewalks and folks mind their own business. Well, they used to, until Sherice Lockheart moved in 2 years ago with a real estate developer husband, for purse dogs, and an accent that didn't match any known region of the United States. She promptly declared her intent to uplift the aesthetic quotient of Timber Hollow, starting with outlawing barns. Yes, barns. You know, the things farmers use. Mine was apparently too rustic, too barn-colored, too visible from the road she rarely drives on. Sherice began her campaign against my existence with strongly worded letters. "Your barn is compromising neighborhood equity," one said. "The presence of hay violates Article 6, organic threats to uniformity," said another. My personal favorite was the one demanding that tractor visibility be limited to designated tractor hours, which he had decided were 4 to 5 a.m. only. I tried to laugh them off at first. After all, my family had been farming this land since before her grandfather learned to spell pretentious. But then came the parking war. She started leaving her Bentley in front of my barn every weekend, claiming she was staging a protest against agrarian excess. My calls to the HOA board went ignored. The notes I left on her windshield were ripped up and stapled to a cucumber, then left in my mailbox. I'm still not sure what message that was supposed to send. The final straw came when she held a photo shoot with her car and 2 miniature poodles on my hay bales, while sipping something with a paper umbrella and calling it country chic. She posted the photos online with captions about bringing civilization to the wilderness. That's when I installed a motion sensor camera. Within a week, I had footage of her intentionally blocking my livestock entrance at 6 a.m., right when I needed to move my cattle to the north pasture. She'd park that Bentley sideways across the entire entrance, then walk away sipping a latte like she owned the place. When I confronted her about it, she filed a false complaint with the HOA claiming I had trapped her car with farm equipment and endangered her dogs with hostile corn. Yes, corn. On the cob. Growing in a field. Apparently, its mere existence was an act of aggression. The sheriff who came to investigate happens to be my cousin's husband, and when he saw the footage from my camera, he laughed so hard he had to sit down on a hay bale to catch his breath. I asked him what the fine was for obstructing private property. He wiped tears from his eyes and said technically, you can tow it, move it, or convert it to a planter box if you want. The law's pretty clear about vehicles blocking agricultural operations. I chose move it, but with my own special touch. The next time she parked that Bentley in front of my barn, and I knew she would because Sherice was nothing if not predictable in her pettiness, I calmly climbed into my 4-ton Massey Ferguson tractor. The front loader attachment had been recently serviced and was working smooth as butter. I approached that overpriced carbuncle like it was a sack of potatoes that needed relocating. The hydraulics whined as I positioned the loader under the car's frame, finding the perfect balance point. 30 minutes later, that Bentley was perched on top of my compost pile like a monument to bad decisions. I'd positioned it perfectly between 2 bales of hay and an old "Don't Tread on Me" sign I'd been meaning to rehang. The poodles watched from a distance, wearing tiny vests labeled emotional support, which I'm pretty sure were meant for her, not them. I took photos from every angle, making sure to capture the artistic way the morning sun glinted off the chrome against the rich brown backdrop of decomposing organic matter. When Sherice arrived 2 hours later to retrieve her car for what she called an important HOA enforcement drive, her scream was loud enough to make my goats panic and 3 chickens spontaneously molt. She stood there, designer heels sinking into the mud, pointing at her car like it had betrayed her personally. "How dare you?" she shrieked in that accent that seemed to shift between British and Southern depending on her stress level. "This is destruction of property. This is assault. This is agricultural terrorism." She called 911 so fast I thought her fingers might catch fire. The dispatcher, who happens to be my neighbor's daughter, tried to keep a straight voice as she took down the details. "Ma'am, to be clear, your car is on top of a pile of what now? Compost and manure," Sherice screamed into the phone. "He put my Bentley on actual excrement." The sheriff arrived within 15 minutes, probably because he wanted to see it for himself. When he got there, he took one look at the scene, then turned to Sherice with the most professional expression he could muster. "Ma'am," he said, trying not to smile, "according to the photos Mr. Bellamy has shown me and the security footage from his property, you've been repeatedly trespassing and blocking his commercial agricultural access. That's a crime. Moving your vehicle to another location on his property, while unconventional, isn't." Sherice's face turned a shade of purple I'd only seen on exotic eggplants. She threatened to sue me, the sheriff, the county, and possibly the manufacturer of my tractor. That's when I pulled out my phone and offered to share the dashcam footage from my tractor, plus the security camera footage, plus the photos of the no parking, private farm access sign she had personally ripped out the week before and thrown in my pond. I'd fished it out and kept it as evidence. The sheriff warned her that she was trespassing and obstructing commerce, which in an agricultural zone carries hefty fines. He also mentioned that filing false police reports, like claiming I'd weaponized corn, was a misdemeanor. Sherice retreated to her car, or rather, she retreated to stand under her car and shout threats up at it while demanding I get it down immediately. Word travels fast in Timber Hollow Ridge, and within an hour, half the neighborhood had driven by to see the Bentley sculpture I'd created. Photos started circulating on social media with captions like "Modern art comes to Timber Hollow," and finally, "Someone parked Karen appropriately." The HOA board called an emergency meeting for that evening, and for the first time in 2 years, the community room was packed. Residents came armed with receipts, literally and figuratively. Martha Henderson brought photos of Sherice threatening to fine her for flying an American flag that was apparently 2 inches too large according to a rule Sherice had invented that morning. Tom Patterson revealed he'd been fined $50 for having too many pumpkins during October. Too many was defined as more than one. Sarah Chen produced a letter demanding she remove her children's chalk drawings from her own driveway within 30 minutes of creation or face a $75 penalty for temporary artistic installations without permit. The board treasurer, a quiet accountant named Harold who'd been keeping detailed records, revealed that Sherice had been using HOA funds to pay for her personal landscaper, claiming it was for community beautification even though the work was done exclusively on her property. She'd also tried to pass a resolution requiring all residents to use the same shade of beige paint, which coincidentally was only available from her brother-in-law's hardware store at 3 times the normal price. The vote was 6-1 to remove Sherice from her position as HOA president, effective immediately. The one vote in her favor was from Sherice herself, who'd refused to recuse herself from the vote about her own conduct. The board also issued her a formal trespass notice for my property and 3 others, and required written permission before she could step foot on anyone's land for HOA business. Since she was no longer president, that meant never. But that wasn't the end of Sherice's troubles. The sheriff's office, after reviewing all the evidence, issued her citations for trespassing, filing a false report, and obstruction of agricultural operations. The fines totaled $4,800. When she tried to argue that she couldn't possibly pay that amount, the judge reminded her that she drove a Bentley and lived in a 5-bedroom house with a pool shaped like a swan. The insurance claim for her car was another story entirely. When Sherice called to report the damage to her vehicle's undercarriage from what she called a malicious tractor attack, the adjuster came out to investigate. After learning that the car had been parked illegally on private property and moved by the property owner, and that the damage was caused by the fermentation cycle of the manure pile, which had created heat and moisture that corrupted the car's electronic systems, they classified it as a freak agricultural incident. The claim was denied because Sherice had created the circumstances leading to the damage through her own illegal actions. The adjuster actually used the phrase assumption of risk when explaining why parking illegally on a working farm and having your car relocated was not covered under comprehensive coverage. The repair estimate came to $12,000 for the electronics alone, not counting the permanent smell that had somehow penetrated the leather interior. Sherice tried to take me to small claims court, but the judge, after reviewing the security footage, the trespass citations, and the sheriff's report, not only ruled in my favor but ordered Sherice to pay my legal fees of $2,000. The judge specifically noted that I had shown remarkable restraint in not having her car towed to an impound lot 50 miles away, which would have been fully within my rights. He also mentioned that placing the car on the compost pile, while creative, had not actually damaged the vehicle initially, Only Sherice's decision to leave it there for 4 hours while she argued had caused the damage. The final blow came when the state's Department of Agriculture got involved. Turns out, interfering with agricultural operations is a serious offense that can result in fines up to $25,000. After reviewing the pattern of harassment, the false complaints, and the repeated blocking of my barn, they issued Sherice a cease and desist order and a fine of $15,000. She stood in the courtroom as the judge read the judgment, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, her face cycling through every shade of red in the spectrum before landing on a pale gray that matched her designer suit.